here with the Skerries Cycling Initiative and the Bike Hub. So we're going to go through the ABCs of checking your bike. So the ABCs are the air, brakes, and chain. Just stuff you want to check before you go on a ride or before you put it away for the winter or get it ready for the summer or whatever. So the first one is air. So it's just checking your tires that they're full of air and that they're not worn out or cracked on here. There'll always be a pressure that you're looking for, the right pressure for the tire. So you want to check that. It's going to be on the sidewall of the tire here somewhere. And then once you find that pressure, could be 40 or 50 PSI for kind of hybrid skinnier tires like this, or medium-sized tires. Mountain bike would be 50 PSI. And then, road bikes would be like 100 PSI. So, but yeah, you always want to check the sidewall of the tire to see. And then if it's low on air, you want to pump it up and you want to check, even give it a feel and see if it feels firm. It should feel quite firm, the level of the pressure of the tire. So if it's soft, you can, you take off the cap like that, you take off a little dust cap, put it somewhere safe. And these are called Presta valves. So these are like skinnier valves that are specifically for bikes. There's also a Schrader valve, which is similar to a car valve. They both work similar, but this one you have to unscrew this little cap here, tap it just to release it. And then if you have a good pump, it'll have the two different types of holes in it. So one small hole for the Presta and one bigger hole for the Schrader, the bigger valve. And so you just hook it on here. All pumps work a little bit different, but this one you push it on and then pull down this gray lever to clamp it on and it grabs on. Some of them you flip out, some of they use different ways of clamping. But you want to make sure it's on there well, so when you're pumping it, it's putting air in there. So this one, let's see what it says, less than 65 PSI, so you go to like 60 PSI. So you just want to pump it up there. So a couple reasons you want to make sure you have enough air in the tires. It makes your cycling easier if they're firm. It makes you less likely to have a puncture. It makes your tires will last longer. So it's a good thing to check even once a week. Just give the tires a squeeze and they should feel quite firm. You shouldn't really be able to squeeze them at all. So that's a major thing you want to check on your bike before you go out or before you get it ready for the season. So to take it off, you just pop that off, and before you let too much air out, get the pump off the valve there. And you want to make sure with these Presta that you screw that little nut back on, because that's what's holding the air in there. So with the Schrader, the other car valve, you don't have to worry about it as much because it's spring loaded, the actual valve, but this part you want to make sure you tighten that nut. And the little black dust cap, it's just keeping dust out of there. It's not holding the air in or anything. So if you don't have one, it's not the end of the world, but it does keep the dust out, so it keeps it working better. So you just screw that back on. And the next thing to check, you want to make sure your brakes are working so you can stop when you need to. So basically your brakes should feel firm kind of at the midpoint between when they're all the way out and all the way. You don't ever want them to touch the grips. If they're touching the grips, they're too soft. It means you're running out of braking power. So you always want them to stop kind of at the midway. They should feel quite firm. It's a bit, if they're not in that situation, then either you need to know how to fix it or bring it to somebody that can fix it for you. But it's just to be aware of if they're getting too soft, then you want to get them serviced, or there's a quick way to tighten them up. If you unscrew this silver part, it's called a barrel adjuster. So if you screw that out anti-clockwise, it actually brings the brake pads in, so it tightens up the brakes because the rubber on the brake pads wears out over time. So this is a kind of a quick way to do it without any tools. So you can see this, it's actually rubbing a bit there, so it's a bit too tight, but you can use this to adjust it in or out. So yeah, if it gets too soft, if when you're pulling the lever, if it's coming closer to the grips, you can unscrew that barrel adjuster, and that will bring the pads in closer and tighten up the brakes. There's other adjustments here, but they're a bit more complicated, so I don't think it's not something we can teach you in the video, but just to be aware of what the brakes should feel like and to make sure they're stopping. If you take it for a spin and it's getting squeaky or they're not really grabbing, it could be that the pads are worn down or have some oil on them from the road or contaminated, so you could clean the rim or replace the brake pads. And the last major thing to check is the chain. So you want to make sure that your chain is nice and lubricated, that the oil's in there, and it's going to get rusty. Like we have a lot of salt in the air and the rain if you have to store your bike outside. So if you can, try to store your bike inside or under cover just to keep it from getting too wet, and try to keep it lubricated. So to lubricate the chain, I'm going to shift it all the way to the smallest gear like that. I'll get a bit of chain lube. And you just drip a little bit onto the chain as you're spinning. So just kind of a steady stream like that. And when this one's been lubricated recently, so you can't really tell, but when it's dry, you'll be able to tell when the liquid, where you started adding the chain oil. And you want to make sure you only get that on the chain itself and not all over the place. And then we have this handy stand, so it makes it easier to do this shifting or changing gears and checking the brakes. But if you're doing this at home and you don't have a stand, you can use the bike upside down or take the bike for a spin and just shift through all the gears to spread the oil on. One thing you want to make sure that you don't do is if your brakes are squeaky, you don't ever want to put oil on the brakes or WD-40 on the brakes, because it's going to do the opposite. You may not have a squeak anymore, but they're not going to stop because that oil is just going to act like oil slick, and the brakes won't grab anymore. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing. If your gears are jumping around, it means that the cable here is out of alignment. So there's different adjustments that somebody who has experience with this can do to kind of line everything up. But those are the main checks you want to do before you go out on your bike. So the ABCs thanks for joining for the ABCs of bike checks.